We're going to address stock surfaces and stock shaping. This gun's already been shaped out with a combination of wood planes, a few rasps. The thing you have to remember is when you start using a very coarse rasp, say somebody like this, when you're using a rasp like that, it's ripping wood. So it's tearing wood off of the gun. And many times it'll disrupt the wood grain farther underneath the surface than what you really want. And it'll end up leaving score lines, and it actually muddies your grain structure. I really like using wood planes sometimes. Let's grab a couple here. There's one little rabbit plane that's nice for corners and stuff. One of our main ones we use a bunch is a plane like this one. You know, just a simple Stanley. Keep a tight throat on it so it doesn't want to chip. But the advantage is you're cutting wood or you're shearing it off. And when you get ready to start sanding it down, if you have a grain structure that you've ripped off of it and then you're trying to smooth it out with sandpaper, you're going to see some of those lines, especially in this comb area where you're going across layers of grain, depends on your tree structure. But you're going to see those lines come through. The advantage with putting the stain down like what I've done here, it's just water with a few drops of stain in. It lets you see some of the grain structure. Also, if you have a score line of something coming from the rasp or a big scratch or even something that's dug in because of your wood planing, you can see where those things are beforehand. What I'm using here is a scraper just to cut this first initial fuzz off. And I'm not scraping like this, because you're hitting hard and soft spots in your grain structure, because the grain is actually making a wave or a whip, and when that grain comes up, you're actually cutting into it every little line. So what I do is I cut across the grain kind of like this. And the sweet thing about having the color on it, you can see where you have not. We'll go up here a little bit. I think it still shows. But as you start getting up on that area, that side's a little more dull than this one. And my first initial scraper cuts, normally this is very coarse with a very heavy burr. When I start getting down to the finished surface where I want to be, this is where we smooth these out on a finer stone and start cutting some of the burr down. What burr is there is very, very sharp, except for it's not as aggressive and it doesn't leave as many score lines in it from moving the wood around. So here's where we are. You can always come back. I'll probably do like a 240 just to soften things out. Most of the time I use sandpaper just to soften edges on things around lock mortises and areas. I like the gun to feel more like an original that's had some usage to it, that it just makes a softer gun. So when you put your hand on it, I don't care if it's the brass components or the steel, you're not feeling a bunch of sharp edges from something that hasn't been finished out real well. But this is where we are right now. We're going to clean up this whole stock on the butt side. The fore stock's all done. The moldings are all cut in on the front. Clean this up. I'll go ahead and cut this rear molding coming through. It'll terminate probably up to about where this spur comes off and come down there in a sheet style fashion. And it'll be a double line molding, so we'll put a secondary cut. Also, it's relieved, so it's going to set up high. I like doing all that before we start putting the patch box in, because if you put the patch box in and you roll down into this bottom 2/3 or bottom third or whatever of the box sitting here, many times there's not enough wood there to be able to relieve that molding to make it not look like a goofy transition from here to there. So the best thing to do is get rid of it, so when your box goes on, this box will probably fit in this ballpark here. Patterns there someplace. I'll grab it at some point later. There it is. And the box is going to go something in that nature. This is a piece of mylar. I like mylar. The paper doesn't tend to hold its corners a lot. If you're doing a one and done where you're only making the box one time, fine. Use a piece of paper, glue the thing to the brass, cut the thing with a jeweler saw all the way around it, and chuck it. But when you're going to make the same gun, I haven't made this gun in many years, but you get an original that's in your shop, you're able to take a pattern off of, or to show somebody's nice enough to let you pull a pattern off of it. You know, proportion wise, it's so much nicer if you like the box that's on an existing gun is to go ahead and pull a pattern. The mylar, you can see through it. I take it and I put a, you can see how slick this stuff is. Doesn't hold a pencil line real good. So what I do is just take this mylar and then sand it a little bit, and then I put like a shellac or something that just yellows it and kind of makes it where it holds a pencil line when it's all said and done. And then just take real good care when you're cutting your patterns out to make them last a long time. And, you know, I kick the bucket. Somebody else may get the pattern and say, hey, then I'm going to use these too. So, hope this helps. We'll catch you farther down the line on this guy.